Thanks for listening to this episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. Over the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen a big rise in cafes having full-on breakfast menus and food programs. Now, it could be very beneficial for your customer base and your guests. However, it could be adding too much complexity and too many challenges to your business model. Now, in this episode, we talk about some of the challenges of having a food program in your cafe and why you may consider not even having a food program or even taking back your current existing food program in your coffee shop. Let's get into this. What is good, everybody? Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. My name is Mark Kotrovsky. This is Sergey Kotrovsky. We're co-hosts of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast, also co-owners, founders of Mirror Coffee Roasters, a small little specialty coffee roasting company based out of Bellingham, Washington, that roasts all kinds of treats, all kinds of single origin light roast treats.
That's true.
So, well, let's pour some batchy. Let's get into this episode. This will be a fun one. Inspired by an Instagram post from a well-known coffee roasting company, Methodical. So, yeah, we'll get into some of those things later, but let's taste some batchy. Let's see what we have brewing.
This isn't our coffee though, right?
Very interesting.
No, this does taste like our coffee now.
It does?
Yeah. It's like yes and no. There's
It's a yes and no. Yeah. There's maybe some
it's light enough, but
similarities.
also it has like quite a bit of texture. Is this fresh?
No.
It has
Very,
a lot
very
of texture.
aged.
Yeah. Maybe it's the brew. Do you taste that texture?
No, I actually think it's pretty nice and juicy.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's like very bad texture. It's heavy. It has a heavy mouthfeel.
Yeah. No, I think the brew overall is great. I'm not sure if I'm ecstatic about the brew just the coffee itself.
Yeah. I think it's solid.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
No, this
not
is
mind
nice.
bloating.
This
It's
is
not
nice.
a mind melter.
Yeah. I'll take back what I just said. I think this is a really solid coffee. I don't think it's quite my favorite. Like flavor profile, flavor. What am I looking for?
It's not
flavor presentation.
It's not as zippy as you like it.
Yeah, and I don't. No, it's nice. It still has flavor. Like again, this is actually one thing where like if I was like grading this, I'd grade this maybe higher. But personally, for my preference, I'd probably lean a little lower. But I think this grade's decent, like nicely. So.
Did you buy this coffee or no? Or someone gave it to you?
I bought this.
Oh. What intrigued you about the bag?
I know this roaster.
Gotcha.
And not only do I know this roaster, but it also had some interesting flavor notes.
That's what I was going to ask.
And it was like rested, so I was like, well, in a few weeks I'm gonna be able to crack into this.
Yeah.
But this is heavily rested, like very.
Yeah.
So
that's why I was gonna say, like, I'm curious too, when you were buying this coffee, what you saw in the bag, what flavor notes you saw in the bag that intrigued you, because I think if you would have tasted this coffee first, you probably wouldn't have committed to a bag.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I've mixed feelings, but this is, again, like I said, like this grades decently for me in my world. Just my personal preference. I think there's something to say for saying like, hey, this is a great coffee. It's just not my favorite. Not my favorite, but this is a good coffee.
I mean, it has
and roast is, I think, is very great. It's very solid.
Yeah.
So
ticket color is about 106.
No.
107.
I don't think so. I think it's lighter, but
Oh, really? Oh,
I
wow.
think, I speculate.
Oh.
Because,
There's like a lot of low ends. Like,
yeah.
you see what I mean? Like the sweetness on it is still very heavy. It
Yeah,
is very juicy. There's just a lot of sweetness on it.
Yeah, there is a lot of sweetness.
Yeah.
Surprising amounts, actually.
Surprising, yeah. But it has like nice tropical fruit, grape, stone fruit. Has deep sweetness in the back end. There's a little bit
The flavor note's honey on there.
honey. Oh, interesting.
So,
Maybe that's the sweetness that I'm tasting that I didn't really pick up. I thought it was
honey
more
and
like
florals.
really.
Yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah, I'm not
I
picking.
don't know. This is a coffee from DAC Coffee Roasters. It's I think it's a pink bourbon, which also turned my head a little bit.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's
Great.
it's a high chance that I'm gonna enjoy this. But yeah, I think I picked it up somewhere in Canada on my last trip, and yeah, it's can't complain. DAC does a good job, and this is one of the few coffees actually that they have that's like a traditional, more traditional washed. I'm pretty sure this is probably like a washed anaerobic.
Yeah.
A little too fruity and too sweet and too interesting for, a basic fully washed. I don't know, maybe not, but yeah. So that's what we're brewing, friends. Keep an eye out. So this podcast lands this upcoming week. There's going to be several new lovely coffees that are dropping, including a very limited run of a geisha. So keep an eye out for that. In Ethiopia plus a Colombian pink bourbon. All very nice. There'll be, just some good treats. So keep an eye out for that. If you're not following us on Instagram, you probably should, because that's where we post updates and release things within the week. So if you're just a podcast listener, go follow us on Instagram to have more consistent updates and kind of knowing when things land. So yeah, but anyways, Methodical posted a few days ago, maybe like a week ago, that they're shutting their food program down for a few different reasons. And that was just interesting, like what they said about, hey, like finding staff, but also things getting more expensive. And it was just like a combination of a few different reasons coming together to kind of make it, just not worth it for them maybe. And something I will say is I really enjoyed that they mentioned that, hey, like we do coffee and we want to focus on doing coffee and doing coffee better, and upping our pastry game along with coffee. Because I think there's like coffee and pastries, I think go somewhat together. They make sense in the same space. I think once you get into like cooking food and heating stuff up, and maybe not as much heating stuff up, but maybe like actually like cooking stuff in a kitchen in the back, is when you all of a sudden start to incorporate a different business. Similar to like having a cafe does not mean you should go open a roastery.
Right.
Does not mean it's instantly a good move. Could it be? 100%. Could be lots of benefits to that. But that doesn't mean you all of a sudden have to rush to go open up a roastery, because it is somewhat of like a different business, even though it seems very, very close. And so in this podcast, we're not going to talk about the roastery side, even though maybe that's a good conversation, why you should or shouldn't start a roasting company if you have a cafe. But I do want to touch upon the food side, because it's becoming more and more popular, but that doesn't mean it's a good idea business-wise, team-wise, whatever you've set out to accomplish with your business. That doesn't mean that you all of a sudden need to flock to introducing a food menu. So
I think there's a lot of parallels when it comes to, like you said, pastries and coffee. It kind of makes sense in a way that you don't even think about it. I think it's much more rare to go into a coffee shop that only has coffee and no snack. I think that's very, very rare. I don't know. When was the last time you were in a cafe that only had coffee, nothing at all.
Yeah, I
that's
don't
very
know.
rare.
I don't know.
I mean, I've been like,
Probably the last place was probably overseas.
possibly, but even to think about like classic Italian cafes, like, don't tell me that that little cafe doesn't have like a little croissant on the side or something like that. Like, it's hard for me to imagine a classic picture of a croissant without a cup of coffee or a shot of espresso next to it in a picture. It's I think super hard for me to imagine. In the same way, when you look at coffee, a lot of coffee is paired with something to eat. I mean, even I can now consider myself more of a regular at that one cafe in downtown Seattle. The
Day-made.
Yeah, Day-Made. They basically serve, what is it, Coffee Collective exclusively right now, or Olympia too, I think. And even there, like, I know my intent to go there was not to eat. It's never to eat. It's, I'm going to get coffee. But I've rearranged my thought process once I started visiting there, because I'm like, well, I can grab a snack. They don't have a food menu. They have like 4 or 3 pastries, couple savory, couple sweet. That's it. No, like, quote unquote, I don't think they have like chocolate chip cookies and stuff like that. But that's like one example, like recent example. But I even think about me going to being like a Starbucks regular back in the day. I mean, if you remember, like, I would always get the little like Dunkin' cookies, the little chocolate bars, right, with coffee. And again, like things like that, again, I mentioned croissants, and finally like biscotti. I think food, those small little food items paired with coffee is an absolute must. And I think it's a guarantee. But when we start talking about things like full-blown sandwiches, like salads, like food items that are not even on the scale of like a restaurant, but still bigger food items. We were just talking about the whole idea of when we go to Woods, like a drive-through, it's almost the expectation there is like, yeah, I'm probably going to get a breakfast burrito. You know what I mean? I think of going to Woods probably for food more than I do for coffee, but it's a coffee shop and a roaster even, So I think those things that the whole pairing with food and beverage is very, very common, but the amount, the style, the perspective of how you do that and with what you do that is the crux of the challenge. Because obviously working with narrative, I saw the possibility of how a food program can elevate your experience in the cafe, can make it pretty next level. Like if you have very good food, and you can also make it a very sustainable business. But I also experienced the fact that we had to close down the food program fairly early into the situation, So there's ways to do it really well. And there's also challenges that you need to overcome that are different than just running a coffee shop.
Right. And I think some of the stuff that I saw in the post that I want to highlight is that some of the challenges of running a food program, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you have way more experience in this, but it's, you need staffing. Staffing is really tough, not only to keep, but also to make sure they're doing a good job, making sure you're keeping a level of quality that's delicious. So that's one thing. And, another thing is waste. Waste is a big thing. I mean, waste is big in every part of any business, including if you just have coffee. Yeah. That's huge. And that quickly starts to eat in your margins. And if margins for food are already tend to lean slimmer and way slimmer than, if you're just listening to this and you haven't worked in a cafe or in a restaurant, or you're dreaming about opening a cafe, like margins on food are very slim. That's just the reality of the industry. And so when you have waste, that margin gets even slimmer, and at some point you're running like a very tasty nonprofit, and that's sure, great, but it's not enjoyable because then you have to manage your employees, and all of a sudden you realize you're putting in so much work and energy and you're getting nothing in return. You're just breaking even, or you're even maybe losing money, or And on top of that, like pairing those two things together is like how I think for specialty coffee shops, especially that serve like special coffees that have a sense, that have a brand that portrays quality and a level of quality that is, above average, which I think most specialty coffee shops that are serving exceptional coffees are aiming for. Well, your food program can't really just be an afterthought when you've portrayed your brand as being a brand that sells very delicious and tasty stuff. It's kind of weird to like buy like a $20 cup of coffee, a $20 pour over of a geisha, and then go get a sandwich that just is terrible.
Right.
And so that's really hard because at some point that could also backfire on you because you're selling a food item, which is generally most of the time probably going to be way more expensive than a cup of coffee. But people, especially in your reviews and in the feedback and in the what they think about your cafe, if they have a poor food experience and they paid more, that's going to backfire on you. That's something to think about. Because like saving a negative review, a negative experience is way more challenging than just providing a good review.
100%.
And that's just, and I think that's what, I don't think people necessarily think about that. And I think pairing with that is realizing that to build something that's really good actually takes a lot of time and resources. And the more parts that you add to your business, to your organization, it generally, like to make whatever part you're adding really, really good, it's going to take way more energy and time and resources than you may think. Unless, well, we can talk about that later. But yeah, anyways, building something really great takes way more time and research than we think. Like, and I want to add just one bit and then I'll let you share some of your thoughts. But like, for example, for us, when I think about like, okay, does Mir want to have a cafe because we're looking for a spot right now, both either for retail or just for roasting because we need some bigger space and bigger room. That's always my thought process is it really worth adding another part? And how do we upkeep the quality level that we want while adding a whole new model or a whole new operation to the line? It's going to take way more time and energy. And is it really worth trying to start something up, something like a storefront cafe, and then providing like a 80%, 70% cafe experience? Because it's going to take so much time and energy to create something exceptional. And that's something I think is worth thinking about when you think about like starting a food menu. It is not, hey, let's just look at the menu that all the other cafes have and everybody has like a bacon, egg, and good sandwich and I need to have one too. Let's just make our rendition. We'll add a special home like house-made sauce. And that makes it different.
No, those are very good and valid points. Going back to what you said about if you're serving like high-end coffee, it doesn't make sense to serve low-end food, right? I think my thought with that is if you're like, imagine going into a cafe and getting like a competition level, like Macava Estate geisha and pairing that with a Chips Ahoy cookie. Like,
That's great.
Doesn't make sense. Same thing with like pairing that with it actually devalues the experience of the geisha. It would have been better just to have the geisha on its own. Right. And I think when food is an afterthought, I think a lot of the reasons that is because everyone knows that, hey, like you got to up your ticket value and you need to bring something else to sell. I think that's one side of the decision making when it comes to adding food. Okay, we need to, up that ticket. That's one side. The other side of it is I think most owners of cafes don't understand food. They just like don't like food in the way that they like coffee. You see, they love the geisha. They know how to brew it. They love the sourcing.
Which makes their cafe side, the coffee side, really good. because they're freaking good at it.
So then in order to add more value to the ticket and add more value to the person's experience, they add food, but because food is not their level, they're not their expertise, they're actually not upping the value of for the customer, and they're not upping the value of the ticket because after a while people realize, oh no, they have good coffee, but their food is subpar. And then they start losing people down the line. And I think that's what you were talking about, is like you can actually hurt yourself by creating a food menu that's like second thought. On the other hand, if your expectations for your coffee and food match, again, going back to the Woods example, hey, if I didn't have time, I know I'm going to get a breakfast burrito through the drive-thru. One, it's quick, it's simple, and it's rarely, I'll say it never tastes bad. It just tastes good. Do I compare that breakfast burrito to some exceptional breakfast sit-down burrito cut in half, plated with, a garnish narrative style? Like, do I compare that? No, I can't.
Yeah.
But my expectations are met because I understand that Woods has a good product, but it's not the same as Narrative or any other cafe that I would go to. So with all of that said, it's like your expectations that you create for the customer have to match. And then with that, if you're an owner, you have to understand like some of the challenges that you mentioned that I personally experienced for a simple dish like avocado toast, very simple dish, almost a cafe must, right? If you're going to a cafe, it has to be kind of, not really, but most of the time it's a necessary item on the menu. For example, avocados, not only are they challenging to price because they fluctuate in price so much. And you can't change your price on the menu every day, right? Or every week. But those prices are going to change quite a bit depending on season. Two, man, I cannot exaggerate how difficult it is to find ripe avocados to make the perfect avocado toast. Especially if you don't have the demand and you can't buy a box and let some rest and pull them. If you don't have the demand for it, all of a sudden what you're dealing with is lower quality avocado toast and a lot of waste. And then on top of that, like arugula, for example, if you use that for like a garnish or on top of that, you buy one pack, and if you don't go through that box or you buy multiple boxes for the right price for your costing, and you can't sell all of that, now you're just tossing about a bunch, and it doesn't make sense. That also creates then tension with the staff. That creates tension with management. That creates tension in inventory. So with all of that said, like it is key to have a food menu that is ran in the same mindset when it comes to like the business, like with marketing, like with pushing that forward in the same way that when you buy a geisha and you know that, hey, you need to make sure that you roast it well. If you're a cafe roastery, right? Yeah. It's roasted well, but then also like everything that you have has to be sold within the parameters of what your shelf life is for that coffee.
Yeah. I think what you mentioned about the expectations that's a big one, because that's also a big part of it. You can set, I think you can set through some strategic marketing and communication. You can set expectations to match maybe something that's a little bit more simpler, that's a little bit more low key. So you can have a really tasty item, like a tasty coffee, but have like a very low key food menu. But then you have to just present it that way.
Yeah.
Don't try to present yourself as like a full-blown restaurant if you're not a full-blown restaurant.
Yeah.
And try to say, oh man, we need to have like 5 items, 6 items, 7 items.
Yeah.
Because everybody has the breakfast sandwich, everybody has the eggs and this, everybody has this. So that means we have to do that. Well, not quite. And it's okay if you present yourself, if you communicate and you release the food items in a way that matches the expectations of what people are going to get. The biggest thing is, I think when you come in and you have some sort of expectation for a spot, and then it's not as good as you expected, that's literally what having a disappointment means.
Yeah.
You had some kind of appointment in your head, and it's a disappointment. It didn't match what your expectations are. So you know, yeah, that's like a really, really big part, you know, like, I mean, I'm sure we've all been there where we're like, there's this restaurant that's like heavily raved about, or this cafe that's heavily raved about, and you go in and you have already a high expectation,
Yeah.
and they don't meet that. Well, it probably would have tasted way better if you didn't know anything about the cafe.
Exactly.
Or about the space.
100%.
But it's that brand that you've built, or the reputation that you've built. Well, it actually takes a lot of work to upkeep that reputation and that brand.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
So
that's also not like, that's not simply a problem for only cafes that try to, you know, serve food. I think I just read and kind of reread Unreasonable Hospitality, and that in itself, like for a Michelin star restaurant, those are the same challenges that they expect. They have to define their menu based on how well they can execute on it. They have to. Or else if you show up to a Michelin star restaurant and they don't execute their menu well, even though they have the expectation of excellence,
right,
that it doesn't measure up. Right. And that's literally like that's a good read, because it actually communicates how challenging it is to make one food well, but also the whole experience, setting that expectation for people when they go into a restaurant of that caliber. But I think this is also, I don't think we talked about taking this twist on it. Is the reality is like, hey, like food in coffee shops is one thing, but we're also seeing this like migration of coffee in restaurants, in quality coffee in restaurants. And the funny thing for me is like, it's almost very similar to the early days when we saw like plated food in cafes. And I remember you and I were talking about like, wait, what? Like, is this real? Like, you can't go into a coffee shop and just have food. There's people, or just have coffee. There's people sitting down and eating a full blown meal. Like that was back in like, I think 2015 for us.
10 years,
yeah. 10 years ago, we were kind of like shocked by that. Right now, I'm kind of shocked when I go into a coffee shop or I go into a full blown restaurant and they're serving some like high end roaster.
Yeah.
And most of the time,
that's fair,
they're just serving it on batch. And I think there's a little wisdom there that I think cafe owners should look in for themselves. Why would they just serve it on batch most of the time? Is because it's actually very easy to achieve next level quality that normally in a coffee shop you would achieve with batch brew. There's a low risk there for there's a low risk to lose that expectation that we're talking about, and you actually meet the expectation of what people want out of that batch brew. If a restaurant like that is trying to serve next level espresso without having the proper training, without having the proper staff, then that's where the loss begins. And I think restaurants are actually doing it much smarter when they're adding coffee than when coffee shops started adding food.
Yeah. I mean, again, we're not saying you shouldn't add a food menu.
Right.
No, there's lots of perks to it. And I want to shout out a few spots that do it really well. But think about that. That's a really great example of thinking. Okay, imagine a restaurant in your town that you always frequent, or some kind of pub or brewery or whatever. And think about them trying to incorporate a full-blown coffee menu.
Yeah.
It sounds almost crazy. That's what the other side of that is trying to do. That's us, cafe people, are trying to add a food menu to match a restaurant.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not that easy. It's a lot harder. Again, it's a lot harder to create something really good. It's way harder actually to create something good, something really great, than we think. It just takes more resources. It takes more time. It takes more energy. It takes more management. It just takes a lot. But on the flip side, I just want to say is like, I mean, again, that doesn't mean you shouldn't. I mean, people cafes like Proud Mary, cafes like Nemesis,
Yeah, Nemesis
who
crushes.
absolutely have just a stunning, like they crush it. And it's phenomenal. And it's done to such a high caliber. And it's such a pleasure to walk in and get a phenomenal cup of coffee and then get a phenomenal meal.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. But man, when it does work and when you can pull it off, I mean, it's exceptional. It's top tier. So
Yeah. And again, going back to the idea, like this is the whole point is to pair and create a beautiful combo. And it's not just to serve one or the other and have them sit together, but to bring the collaboration between your food and coffee to be a complement for one another. And that's also not uncommon in other things. I think of like wine bars. Like it's very common at a wine bar to have pizza. Like that seems like a combo that very well, like that goes together very, very well. And then it also complements the business. And the more I look at like other other places where people experience beverages and the combination of food, I think coffee shops have a long ways to go. Like I think we have to be much smarter as owners to understand like, okay, like how are we going to build out a menu that is both sustainable, that is profitable, but also again matches the expectation, is a good business model, you, like dealing with waste and all the other issues, but also is a complement.
yeah.
One complements the other. Like it has to be that way. It can't just be like, hey, let's just throw some things on the menu to have a higher ticket average.
And one last thing I will say is, a really easy way to go about it is just to like, you can just put it on pause.
Yeah.
And then just find like a company, some kind of vendor that does exceptional pastries. Let them crush at what they do, and you can crush at what you do. And then you'll just have a full on exceptional space that people can come in and everything tastes good.
Yeah.
Everything's phenomenal. I know we always want to try to vertically integrate everything. Cafe wants to start a roastery. Cafe wants to start a restaurant. Cafe wants to do this. But there's way more perks. Maybe not way more, but there's just as many perks to saying, I'm actually going to let the roasters do their job and just buy coffee from them.
Yeah.
Or I'm just going to let the bakers, the local pastry shop that's crushing it already, do what they do best and just use them.
Yeah, 100%.
So
I totally agree. But I mean, I can keep talking about other examples, but totally.
Cool. Well, that's a wrap, friends. Hopefully, this was an interesting listen. I think folks in the industry, I think, will resonate with a lot of these things, and these are just tensions and stuff that we just always think about in the industry. So thank you so much for listening or watching another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. And as we always say, remember, reflect what's good.